kind of wanted to just start off by doing like a brief introduction before Cicely dives into her session. Everybody, I'm Sharon. I'm adult supporter for GSP Care CalWorks. And I'm glad that everybody could be here today. And I'm really happy that we're able to partner with both like our intercultural center and as well as the cooking project to be able to provide this for our students. One thing that I kind of wanted to mention was that as we were collectively planning for these sessions, we did so together. And so I kind of wanted each of our staff members to kind of introduce themselves. So Jose, do you want to go?
Sure.
Just a brief introduction.
Yeah, hi everyone. As you know me, my name is Jose. I'm currently supporting the Guardian Scholars, the Care and CalWorks program as the retention specialist. I've been part of Skyline forever, since 2010 in many capacities. And this is the first time that I see a project such as this. So one of the things that I wanted to emphasize is we are experiencing so many difficulties and now we're doing things remotely, but even with even doing so, there's some positive aspects. So I'm really excited for this event. I'm looking forward for everyone's feedback. I'm hungry.
And then Sasha, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Sasha. I am part of the cooking project, and I'm just really excited to have this collaboration with the Guardian Scholars Program and the people here, and can't wait to get cooking.
Great. And then Cicely, I'll be introducing you a little bit more in depth, but if you want to just give like a little overview of yourself.
My name is Sicily. I cook for a living. I opened a restaurant that I owned, and now my mother owns and operates in the Bay on Cal's campus. I opened a restaurant here in New York. I'm in New York now. I'm from California. I taught with the cooking project for years in California. And yeah, so now I have a hot sauce company, and doing these classes is like super near and dear to my heart, and they're super fun because I think that cooking is a great way to find like joy, and it's super easy, and it is a form of resistance. Let me get this up.
Awesome. Thank you, Cicely. And then Alan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, y'all. My name is Alan Ocampo. I'm the Program Services Coordinator for Student Equity. And I try to facilitate a lot of the events out of the Intercultural Center, and the one that we're doing in partnering with the Cooking Project is Wellness Wednesdays. So some of you were there yesterday. Glad to have y'all here. And also, if y'all want to kind of talk more about just dialogue about cultural food, our place is a place to do so. And one thing I do want to say is I am definitely blessed to be working with this team that Sharon has kind of collaborated here for all of us. You know what? This is a sincere team who cares not only just about food, but about the power of food and what it means to folks of color, you know, and what it means for marginalized communities too. And so Cicely was hitting it right on the dot when she was saying, you know, this is about resistance, you know? And so I just want to say, in accordance with Cicely's shirt, I'm excited.
That was perfect.
Oh, good. That was hilarious.
Yeah, that was the perfect, that was the perfect line right there. Yeah. Thank you all. So collectively, we've been working as a team to kind of push this project forward. And so we're really excited. The Cooking Project has been around, and they've been really teaching young folks fundamental skills inside and outside of the kitchen, but really just allowing and holding space for folks to talk about cultural dishes and you know, traditions that have been passed down in terms of different recipes and ingredients. And so we're going to dive in deeper to that. And as Alan mentioned, on the Wednesdays are typically the dialogues, and then the Thursdays would be the virtual cooking session. And so we would love students to continue to attend the sessions if possible. We have 3 more coming up And we'll be sending out reminders for folks. So we would love for students to continue to engage. And yeah, I'll just introduce Sicily briefly. As she had mentioned earlier, she's now stationed in New York City. The cool thing, fun fact about her, she used to be a Power Ranger. So that's really cool. She used to be a successful actress and a Power Ranger. She graduated from Le Cordon Bleu, and she started internship at Los Angeles, which is really dope. After that, she actually she collaborated with her mother and co-founded Pinks and Reds as part of La Coquines incubator program. And so really excited for Sicily to be part of this and to kind of share her insights. But, you know, really just having her grounded and rooted into our community and talking a lot about holding space specifically for the Black community is something that she is truly passionate about. And she's excited to share some of her dishes and really tie into different traditions, cultures, family, and places. And so I'll let Sicily take it from here, and I'll stop sharing my screen over here so you can dive in.
Hi everyone.
Let's see if we can.
A little bit
I'm
bigger.
gonna make you the host, Sicily.
I don't know. I mean, sure, but I don't know
Yeah,
to do
actually,
anything. So yeah. So I cook. I cook a very particular kind of food in my food businesses. I cook, I guess, what could be considered all-American food. It also bleeds into like this idea of soul food because it is my form of resistance, because I feel like we've always been here. And so I create food that like is very simple, I think, and a little basic. In theory, it's actually pretty complicated when you get into like the nuanced parts of it, but it's just to show that like African Americans have been weaved in, like so many other POCs, in the foundation of America and the food that we all identify with. So that's my jam. So today it's actually my birthday. So
Hey, happy birthday.
Straight. So we're gonna make one of my like favorite dishes because I'm eating this for dinner. It's chicken pot pie. Okay, so there was a few things that went awry thanks to the pandemic. One, thanks guys. I went to order stuff, and I live in a food desert. I live in the Bronx and I love my neighborhood, but I'm very aware that like we don't have access to quality food. I actually have to go very much so out of my way to get food. So we order through like Target and get like little things. So I actually put an order in for like the Target grocery store, and they fudged a lot of it, but it's okay because I had a plan. So we're gonna make chicken pot pie. The cool thing is, this is a recipe. I think we bought 2 chickens yesterday, and each one of them we got from Whole Foods were $9.99. So that's $20. So that's like the most expensive thing. But we bought carrots, celery, garlic, all of the staples. So carrots, celery, garlic, a bag of spinach, a bag of potatoes. Yes, look at my fancy stitch. Each one I probably spent like $1 on, right? So with 2 chickens, which I didn't need the 2, I probably spent max $30 on this meal. And it's gonna feed a lot of people. I mean, I've done one already, and this one's gonna be like a smaller, cuter version. So for me, let's get started. We've got the celery, onions, and carrots, right? Because these are all things that we're gonna use multiple ways. So instead of buying chicken stock, because like my family has a lot of food allergies and they'll put other vegetables in them that we're allergic to, we try to be as no waste as we can fathom. So because everything comes like multiple carrots, multiple stalks of celery. We're actually making stock and using like the bones from the chicken, the roasted chicken, so we're not like totally wasting it. And we're gonna make stock, and then we're gonna make our chicken pot pie. And then I didn't make dough from scratch today because it's my birthday and I like Pillsbury very well. So we actually use that. Okay, so let's talk about knife skills, and we'll get in more into that too when we talk about all the things that went wrong. Like I ordered carrots and they gave me the wrong carrots, but because I understand knife skills, I was at peace in my heart about it. So the first thing is knives. Most people will be like, what kind of knife is a good knife? And the reality is the best knife is the one that fits your hand, right? So how do you know? Here are all these other ones. These are like chef's knives. They're just different lengths. And then I spent more money on these. And then this is my 8-year-old's knife from IKEA. So you want to take your dominant hand, the finger and the thumb. You want to grab your knife. And this is like the spine of the knife. So just before the hand, like just after the handle, you want to take your finger and your thumb and you want to pinch and wrap your fingers around, right? So that's how you hold it. And you know that it fits you if you just take them and they balance evenly. So see how like, it's like I'm squeezing very tight to hold this, but my hand is super small. So this does not work for me. So like, see how it like wobbles a little bit? So I actually don't use chef's knives. I actually use a mini cleaver to cook my food. But if you see like, boom, it doesn't move, I'm solid. And you want to take it, so you want to pinch the spine and then wrap your fingers around. You don't ever want to hold it like this because it can move in your hand. And so like when you're cutting something round, like an onion, it'll begin to wobble, and that's how you can cut yourself. So you want to pinch and hold, and then like, you know, if you ever got into a fight, they can't pull it out your hand. So you're fine. So I'm going to cut my onion first because we're going to do our stock, and I'm going to let that sit on the back and go. With the magic of television, I have some already made. So this is just to show you guys how to do it. So onions. We have a ton of onions around here because we make hot sauce and we always like keep the leftover onions. And then my partner, her family owns a farm that's been in their family for like, since they were slaves, and it's like 100 acres. So he sends us onions all the time. So if you don't like onions, there's probably a reason why, because this is how I feel about them. So you want to cut your onion from root to tip, generally, except for like if you're making onion rings, then this doesn't apply. Because if you look at your onion, there's like all these lines and veins in the onion. So it's a grain. So it's a living, breathing thing. So if you cut it not from root to tip, but like straight down the middle, you're essentially tearing the fibers and the grains of the onion. So if you've ever eaten an onion and it feels like hella slimy when you eat it, that's why. And also when you tear the fibers like that, that can actually make you cry. So we'll cut it from root to tip, right? Smooth. And I'm gonna just actually leave this one whole. So when you're cutting it, you want to peel back that first layer and even the second layer where it looks like you're like at the good part of the onion. But what happens is that's also a protective coating. So if you've ever ate an onion or somebody's cooked it for you and you thought that they couldn't cook, it's not that necessarily. It's because they didn't peel back enough layers of the onion. So if you see, like, I don't know if you can see either camera, it looks like I'm like disposing of a lot of the onion, but I'm really not. This is not gonna taste very well either. So I'm gonna throw those 2 layers away. And for this one, I'm just gonna cut off the root and leave that one. And while we're chatting about this, I'm gonna cook at the same time. So this pan is actually dirty. This is a wok. And it's like, I don't know, like a hipster wok, I guess. But I love it because of the way that it conducts heat. So most people will think of like stereotypes, like stir frying and all of these things, but there's so much more that you can actually do with a wok that people don't consider. So I put oil in my pan and it's heating up pretty quickly. So I'm gonna drop my onion whole in there. And then I already cut this celery. I'm gonna drop this celery in there, and some of my chicken leftover bones, and whole carrots. I don't need to be like hella fancy with this because it doesn't matter. And then I got like dried thyme, which I'm gonna put in there. And if you ever buy garlic and you want to keep it for a long time, you can just cover it with oil and it stays. Like we've had this garlic for about, I want to say about 4 or 5 months. And so I'm just going to put a ton of garlic in there because we like a lot of garlic, right? I'm going to push this back so maybe you can see it like a little bit better. Yeah. And I'm gonna salt it. And I'm gonna let it look, I'm gonna let it get color. It's gonna start to look, this is kosher salt, right? Iodized salt is the cute little girl with the umbrella. That means that there's other chemicals in there. This salt is better, not just because it's been blessed by a rabbi, but it's super clean and pure, right? So that means I can actually salt heavier, because I know it looks like I put like a lot of salt in there, but I can salt a bit heavier because I'm salting with pure salt and nothing else. So if you want to see, you see how it's just starting to get color, but I want like way more than that. I want it to look pretty charred. And I'm actually going to add like a little bit more oil just around the edges. Because I want as much flavor. So see how it's starting to get like color? So this is what I want. Another way to do this is roast all your vegetables in the oven. And it's super easy because it's like you can keep the throwaway pieces that you didn't use, like all your scraps. And instead of like throwing them in the trash, like that's money in the trash. I'm gonna let it go just a smidge longer. And then I'm gonna cover it with water and put it on the regular stuff. You can cover it with as much water as you want. I'm gonna do probably like 2 quarts of water. All right. So see, it's got like a good little bit of color. So because I'm getting so much color on this, the starch is going to be dark. See, my onion's pretty dark. But that's what I want. So then I'm just going to take it. I'm going to turn off the heat. I'm just going to... like cover it with water. I'm going to move it to the back. It's dope because my hipster wok came with like a lid, which is rad. So that way I can let it like boil and get really delicious. And then you can keep this, you can freeze it. You can add it to your rice and do whatever. And then you don't feel like you've wasted all the money that you spent. So back to my onion for my cooking experience, right? So once I get the half that I'm actually gonna use, I'm gonna peel back my 2 layers, right? I'm gonna cut this tip out just to make it a little bit easier for me. I'm gonna start to peel back. This one's actually pretty good, so I can keep the second layer on this side. So you wanna keep the root intact, right? Because when you read these recipes and all of these jazzy things, you wanna be able to make your life easier. So honestly, if you see this, like this recipe, I've only used, well, I've used 2 for this one, but in reality, I made my stock and I set it aside, and then I cooked my chicken pot pie stuff, filling in there, and then put it in this. For this one, I'm gonna cook everything in here and put the dough on top of this one, just to be able to like make my life easier. I don't wanna do a lot of work and I don't wanna do a lot of dishes. So, how you cry with an onion also. You need a good knife. So some people will cry from cutting against the grain, and other people will cry because their knife is not sharp. Because if your knife is not sharp, you're essentially just tearing the onion, and that's what can make you cry also. Or your onion could just be strong and you're gonna cry. So most people will like lean for this, right? When you get your like dope little knife kit, when you be out on your own and you go to like Home Goods or Target and you get your kit and it's got a knife, a paring knife, a serrated knife, the one with the grooves, and a steel. This is a steel. So this is actually not meant to sharpen your knife, it hones your knife. So if you think about it like when you're driving a car or using a pencil, the way you use it wears down on whatever side. So as you use your knife, if you're left-handed, right-handed, or whatever the case may be, it starts to actually bend. So this just will allow it to realign and be straight. And so you want to go even amounts on each side. So if you do 2 on this side, you want to do 2 on this side, and that'll help keep it aligned. So you want to take, if you can see like the grooves of my onion. So let's say your recipe says to julienne your onion, cheat way. You want to take it and you're just going to follow the lines, right? To get even knife cuts. And I'm going to go down, in, and around. I pulled that one out. Right? And I have my root, so it's keeping my onion intact, and I'm going to tuck my fingers so I don't cut the tip of my fingers off. And so I've cut them all, and they would look like this, right? So all I would have to do is like cut the root of my onion, and I have my julienne little babies. Let's say you forgot and you cut the root of your onion off. You would just like take a fork and stab wherever you cut it, hold it in place, and do the same thing. And then you'd pull out the fork and cut where the fork was, and you have all your like juliennes. The same thing can happen, like if you wanted to dice them, you would leave it intact and just dice it. But we're gonna make pretty little juliennes for this one. And so I'm gonna take my celery. I only need 1 little stalk of celery for this. And when I'm cutting my celery, I wanna cut off the end that starts to get to the root. But what you want to be mindful of is even cooking time with your knife cuts. That's why knife cuts are so important, because if you've ever cooked something and like some is overcooked, some is undercooked, some is just perfect, this is kind of why. So when you're cutting celery, I'm going to try to consistently cut all the way. And sometimes you can like baby step it and like line them up so you make sure that they're the same size. But you don't want to hear this noise. It sounds like hella cool and you sound like you're really cooking, but actually you're chipping and dulling your knife. So you want to do a sawing motion. So you want to slice and then come down and then slice again. Or you want to go up either direction. That's better for your brain, but you want to make sure that you're like slicing all the way through. And so I can keep my knife cuts pretty consistent throughout the whole body of the celery, right? And so I'm like patting my head and rubbing my stomach. I'm tucking my fingers and moving it towards my knife with this hand as I'm like doing my sawing motion, right? So they're gonna be the same all the way until my celery starts to like grow out. And then when I get to here, because I don't want to throw this away, I'm gonna start making thinner cuts, because the thinner cut will compensate for the thicker cuts that I made in the stock because they're longer. And that'll kind of give me more even cuts and even cooking time. So those are my friends. And so like with our carrots, right? I said I wanted carrots, and they bought me like sticks, like shoestrings, not shoestrings, but like carrots that came like this, which is fine for me. So what I would have done is I would have taken a whole carrot, peel it, right? And then I would have actually squared it off, because it's easier to cut flat surfaces and then a round surface. And then, or you could have like cut your little fingerling size like this. But for me, I'm gonna take 2 because I'm making a smaller portion. And I'm just gonna cut them all till they're about the same size. Because it's gonna give me a nice little dice situation, like a very thin dice, anyway. Because the Target shopper did the majority of the hard work for me. So that's how I know all of them are the same. So this will cook evenly. And the cool thing is, tomatoes, celery, carrots is mirepoix, which is a French word for vegetables that you can roast together that cook at an even cooking time. And so I can actually cook all of these things at the same time. I don't have to worry about like one burning for the length of time that the other one is in there. Like I'm actually okay. So here's all my jive. I'm gonna turn on my cast iron because cast irons are amazing. And this is gonna go in the oven. Try to slide this over so you guys can see more. Yeah, there we go. All right, I'm gonna check my stock. Starting to boil. So once it starts to come up to a boil and it starts to bubble, I'm gonna bring it down to a simmer because I don't want it to evaporate, but I still want it to like do its thing and infuse that flavor. Okay, so I'm gonna oil my pan. I use grapeseed oil. Flavored oil is like super good. Sometimes like we'll use our garlic sits in grapeseed oil and we'll use this. But it has a higher smoke point. I don't have to like, olive oil will burn once you start to like smell it and it starts to like lose its color and all that stuff. It's burning and it doesn't hold a high temp. So this does, and it's pretty safe. So like olive oil, canola, vegetable. But this one is safe because we have a ton of food allergies and I don't have to worry about it. So I'm going to put this in my pan. Okay. I just put the oil in there. You can see it looks like it's starting to like thin out and cover. So what you want to look for is, I heat my pan first, I add the oil. Then the oil will begin to look shimmery, like the ground on a hot day. That's what they mean when these recipes say shimmer. So it'll start to look wavy, like the ground on a hot day. And then people get like hella nervous. You're in control. My fire is up pretty high. So once I start to drop this food in there, I'm going to start to manipulate my heat. Like I'll turn it up, turn it down. But another thing to consider is like, I'm gonna turn it down now because it's starting to get hot. It's starting to smoke, which means like when it starts to smoke, I can use that residual heat to cook and actually not cook with the heat on. Like it's smoking, I can essentially turn this off. So most people get hella nervous when the oil's hot and you gotta put something in there, right? They're like, I'm about to die because I'm gonna get all these burns from this oil. This is what you do. I'm using a towel for this one because the cast iron is hot altogether. I'm gonna tilt my pan away from me so the oil is all down there. And then I'm gonna take all my jive and I'm gonna drop it at the top of my pan. So as I start to drop this stuff in there, I'm not really getting splashed because nothing is like in the oil. And then I'm gonna put it down and the oil never hit me. So I'm gonna turn this back on. So salt, right? I'm using kosher salt, not iodized because I wanna know what I'm putting in my food, right? Iodized is scam. Iodized salt is actually meant to cut the snow on your driveway. So when you use iodized salt, think about that. So I'm gonna take a good pinch and season this. I want to go up high. Hella Salt Bay is stupid, but he's actually right, because when I go up high, I'm distributing the salt evenly everywhere. If I go low, I'm putting it in one spot and I got to work harder to move all that jive around. So I'm going up high and I look like I salted a lot, but I didn't, honestly. And because I'm using straight salt, salt is a natural cure. So it's gonna pull all the moisture and the goodness and all of the things out. So if you really wanna show off for people, if you salt it really well when it first goes in, they're gonna be like, what's that smell? And you're like, oh, it's just the thing that I'm doing. Nothing's happening. It's just that the natural juices are coming out, so it smells good. And I'm gonna use pepper because this house is fancy. These people like fresh cracked pepper. I shake it out the can, but they judge me. So that's in there. It's cooking. It's gonna do its thing because I want it to cook down. Now, this is totally up to you, and this is where you can start to play with it. I want a little color on mine because I want a little caramelization on it because all the sugar is coming out from the carrots and everything, and it's browning. You don't necessarily have to, or you don't have to have a ton of color. It's up to you. It's like, do you want it more crunchy when you eat it and have a little bit of texture? That's fine, right? So this is me. I'm gonna lay it out. We want a little bit of heat. This is like my little extra. These are actually smoked paprika flakes. So it's a smoke, but not a spice. It looks like a lot, but it's not. And we're gonna keep building on it. So like I'm gonna add flour and chicken and all of these things. So it's not gonna be as hot as it appears to be, right? So I'm gonna let that cook. If let's say you wanted to add chili flakes, but you didn't want it to be super spicy, you would add them towards the end. So it's like it hasn't been sitting on the heat to be able to break down as fast enough, right? So I'm gonna add that now. I'm gonna turn this up a little bit because I'm impatient. I'm gonna add a little more oil. And then I'm gonna take the potatoes. So I took these potatoes. You can put them in the microwave. You know, it's a faux baked potato. You can boil them. If you make your stock, you can boil them in the stock so it adds flavor. And I'm just gonna cube these up while I'm waiting because they're already basically cooked. Fork tender, right? When people go like, what does that mean? It just means you can stick your fork through it and it goes through smooth. So they're all fork tender and I don't have to worry. Let me turn my heat down just a smidge. So I'm gonna add those. And then I'm gonna add some garlic, right? I went to yesterday's class and I was like super in love with it because obviously my life's work, my mission is like making sure that every foodway is honored, every food story. And so I was thinking when he was talking about like, what's your cultural dish that you love? So many of us are migrant people and we don't, because that history is not fairly told, our dishes start to morph and look a bit different, right? So as migrant people in general, as people who have immigrated here, right? Like it was really interesting to me that so many of us have like been in love with the experience of being exposed to other food. So it got me to thinking and I began to have a conversation with a friend of mine. So my garlic, I'm just slicing it up. This one's pretty soft because it's been sitting in oil. But if you've ever seen Goodfellas, right? Like super thin slices. I mean, y'all don't have to cook with a razor blade though, guys. Don't get carried away. But I'm gonna make super thin slices to make my work a little easier because I'm gonna mince this. But it's already breaking down. But yeah, so I was thinking about that, right? Because as people grow and move out and migrate for whatever reason that they migrate, they begin to build community and relationship and culture with people that may look very different than what they're used to. So this idea that if we were really all coming together as a community and really leaning on each other's culture and food ways, does that mean that like our food begins to look very different, or our food memories, our food stories, because the community around us changes so much? And that was like something that really stuck with me yesterday because I felt like in doing this work, I've had a bit of a narrow view of what culture looks like because it's so singular to a specific person or a specific region or a specific ethnicity. But there are people out here that don't necessarily look like me. There are some that are problematic. So I'm saying this with a grain of salt. But like there are some people who grew up in communities and get introduced to things and that be their form of like community and culture, even though it doesn't belong to them. So I've really been thinking about that yesterday and today. So my garlic was sitting in oil, so it actually minced up very nicely. And you just keep chopping and chopping. So I'm gonna turn my heat, because I've been turning my heat off and on, because this cast iron, this particular one hates me. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't trust me. We don't have a good relationship. So when you cook your garlic, no lie, people be like, cook it for a minute. Don't. Like, this is it. Once you start to smell it, it's there. Like, if you want just basic garlic, simple recipe garlic, I'm gonna let mine go a little bit more because I want it to fry just a little bit, because I love garlic. It's delicious. And it keeps vampires away. And it's October. It's almost Halloween. You know what I'm saying? So all of my things are in there. My lovely chicken that I had from yesterday that was bland, that I paid way too much money for, that obviously it was gross because nobody ate it. I want the fat. I want everything. So I'm gonna chop this up. I'm a person who believes the name of the dish is the star of the dish. Peanut butter and jelly, it's about the peanut butter, not the jelly, right? So chicken pot pie is about the chicken. So I'm gonna do like pretty big chunks of chicken because it's the star. You know what I'm saying? It's her show. So I want the skin, I want everything. So I'm gonna turn my heat back up. I'm gonna add this in. Oh, hold on, someone's calling me. I don't know who that is. Okay, so I'm gonna add this in, right? So the thing is too that I wanna be mindful of, because this is almost like a one pot dish, is that I wanna make sure that I got enough in this pot to look full. Right? Boom. And check on my stock back here. It's looking pretty good. All right. So I want to get a little crispy, crunchy stuff happening to give me like layers of flavor and texture. Right? Then I'm going to add, I had like leftover spinach, and I got to trick my kids. You know what I'm saying? I'm just going to tear it and put it in here. And then I'm gonna add my potatoes, because I hate peas, no lie. And I really hate frozen peas. So I'm actually not putting that in my pot pie. I'm putting the things that I like in it, because the recipe is not eating it, I'm eating it, right? I'm gonna turn this down just a little bit. And I want to move everything around just so it's evenly distributed. You know, it's like nothing worse than like eating all the chicken out of it and then having like potatoes and everything else left. I want to make sure all the vegetables are mixed in, everything. Boom, right? And then I'm going to add some flour, because I want this to be thick, like a thick sauce. If you like yours runny, you actually don't have to add flour. You can add a little, you know, or you can add like beans if you want beans in your chicken pot pie, because you just like move the bean around and it'll agitate the skin, and the skin is a natural thickener, right? The potatoes are a natural thickener. So if I wanted to cook my potatoes a little bit more, I could allow them to break down and then do that. So I made some stock earlier. I took all the jive, right? Roasted it a little bit, added all my veggies, all the things, added the water, let it cook. I let it get pretty dark. And then because I didn't want to waste all the vegetables, BTW, take the bones out before you do this, because I didn't do it earlier. So then I got my blender, but you can mash it up. You can do whatever you want to do. And I put it all in the blender. So I added the liquid, added the vegetables, and that's why it's like this thick color. And so I'm just gonna pour it over. So like, why waste the vegetables that I use? They're still good. It's gonna add texture to my food. And then see how much more liquid you want. This is a cast iron, so I can be like a little more generous with the liquid, right? Because it's all gonna bake out. So I'm gonna add a little bit more. I got like vegetables. I'm getting all my food groups. And I'm gonna let that sit. I'm gonna turn it on high while I get the most important thing, aside from the chicken. Pie dough, right? So I'm gonna take this. This is a pretty big one. I think it fits like 8 or 9 inches round. But I love crust. You know what I'm saying? Like, who doesn't? So I'm gonna unroll it and let that sit. So I'm gonna do 2 things. I'm gonna add some butter into here and just let it melt in. And I'm gonna finish it with butter so I get that buttery taste just like right on top. Guys, it's healthy because what's gonna happen is I'm gonna stand up while I'm eating it, and while you stand, you're burning calories. So the butter never really happened, you know what I'm saying? And it's vegetables. So, boom. And because my butter is a little warm, I'm gonna take this and just lay it over. And I want it to look a bit rustic. So I'm actually gonna leave it like outside of the cast iron and just crunch it and fold it how I see fit, because I'm gonna serve it to my fam in this. So you can grab a butter knife. I'm gonna grab an offset spatula that you use for like cakes. And because my butter's been sitting out, I'm just gonna like have a little bit on here. And then I'm gonna take, I can use this, and just poke little holes. And this is all jive that I got from like the Target grocery store for like 20 bucks. You know what I'm saying? If I didn't get my overpriced Whole Foods chicken, then I would have gotten just like chicken on a bone. And I'm gonna sprinkle some salt and some pepper on top. And then I'm gonna take it and put it in the oven at like 450, because my oven's untrustworthy. And then when I pull it out, it's gonna look like this, right? And so that's my whole life's work, guys. Basic, even knife skills, super simple. It's like hella flaky. And if you see it, I'm just spilling it everywhere. It's really good. And it's like a good comfort. When he was speaking about what are the cultural dishes that you remember, this is a dish. This is a dish that is like a quintessential American dish, I would say. It's something that I was raised on that's super easy, that feeds a family. It was my mom, and then she had 4 kids. So this is something we would go to. And this is a part of our story. This is a part of our family. It was really interesting yesterday in the breakout sessions. I was in a breakout room with a young lady, and she was like, my grandmother handed me a stack of recipes and was like, this is the things that I've been cooking that have been in my family for years. Take them, carry on these memories. And that's a form of power, right? When we talk about like food is power, it's nurturing your mind, your body, your soul, your legacy, your family. And so the idea of being able to create these dishes and sit around and nourish your family, or whatever, or however you define family in your community, that's something pretty rad. And so like for us, my children have a very deep association with food and community, right? Like they know that the people who feed you are the people who love you the most, right? So being able to do that is an honor. And it's something, I'm gonna use this one, that I take like pretty seriously. And so it's my form of resistance, my form of power. And it's something that like we could all have access to. Okay, so this is what it looks like. So it looked like a lot of liquid went in, but it didn't. It's like a real life pie. Yeah, do you guys have any questions? There are some. Oh, do you guys have questions? Do you feel like food is a form of power, that it's a form of resistance? No one? Okay, fine. That's fair. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I don't want to eat in front of y'all. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's rude. So I hope that you guys come back and hang with me. We'll do some other cool things around the holiday. We're going to teach you guys some more like really simple techniques, and just talk more about like what it means to gather around food. Again, this is a dish that I, including my overpriced Whole Foods chicken, spent about 35, max 40 bucks on, but it's something that can feed at least 6 people. So that's not bad. It's under 10 bucks a person, and it's warm, it's cozy, and it makes for great leftovers. Worst case, you can freeze it. If you're really adventurous, like in my house, we'll put this in between a sandwich. We'll like grill 2 pieces of bread and then put this with some mayo in between. It's totally unhealthy. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. And I'll see you guys in 2 weeks, I think, or something like that, right? Yeah.
I have a question.
What?
Do you think it's a little bit different each time you make it? Or is it usually like pretty consistent?
It's fairly consistent. The things that will trip you up is like your oven, right? If I left this pie dough in the freezer until I had to use it, right? So it's gonna be more flaky and crispy, because with pie dough, what happens is there's like layers of flour and butter, and then the butter melts and like puffs up the pie dough to make it like crispy and flaky. So if you left this out for even a few minutes and it's pretty warm in here because of the oven, it's not going to be as crispy. But it's pretty consistent. I mean, unless you buy your chicken like I did. But yeah, this is a pretty like, there were no measurements. I got half an onion, 1 stalk of celery, a handful of like sliced carrots, salt, pepper, and some garlic. So it's like you could add parsley, you could add, the way you could switch it up is just adding the things that could change it, the things that you have like lying around your house, if you happen to have like pie dough lying around your house. But yeah, it's pretty consistent. It's like pretty foolproof.
Okay. Happy birthday.
Oh yeah, happy birthday. Does the skillet make a difference? I know what if people don't have a cast iron? Does that affect?
No, the cast iron, that's why I added more liquid when we were cooking that one, because it'll like reduce the liquid. But no, and I think that this is actually pretty cool, like the Pyrex, because you can see like the bottom of it. So if you wanted to like be a bit more intentional about like putting vegetables and color around the edge and like really layering it in, you could. So when you like set it on the table, you're like, look at the thing that I did. And they're like, ooh, what's that in there? And they're like, oh, it's seasonal, market fresh. You know what I'm saying? Like you can tell that story. But yeah, the cast iron will probably dry it out a bit more. That's the only thing.
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
So happy birthday, and I think you deserve a well round of applause. It was amazing. It was informative.
Oh, thanks, guys.
I will speak for myself. You kept me engaged throughout the entire session, and you just took me back. As I shared in a couple of sessions before, my father used to do that for a living, and he used to cook for thousands of people in large conventions. So I used to observe him, but I never asked him why he was doing things the specific way he was doing it. So hearing your explanation, looking at the things that you were doing and why you were doing it, I think it was super powerful, and just bringing it back to food is power, as you mentioned, and being able to share that specific side of you. Thank you for allowing some time during your birthday. Not everyone would do it. Most people would reschedule it. So thank you so very much. For once, I was super excited, and I'm definitely looking forward for future sessions. And I think I can speak on behalf of our students. They enjoyed it so much. So for folks that ended up tuning in late, this is being recorded, so you'll be able to access it at a later time if you want to go back and do it. And this is something that I definitely will be sharing with my family. I'm not super expert in cooking, but my wife, my mom is, my sister is getting to it. So I think this is a good family project that everyone can just chip in and
Yeah.
get it completed. So thank you so much, Sicily, and also Sasha.
Thank you. Thank you,
you.
guys. Well, I hope you guys have a good rest of the day. It's early. It's like 4 where I'm at. And I have a murder mystery Zoom party to go to.
Oh, that's cool. Halloween early.
Yay! Have
Yeah,
fun.
I'm super excited. Yeah, I have to read my like it comes with like a kit, so I have to read my. It's called Death by Chocolate. So I have to read everything, and then my partner is making a chocolate cake from a friend from Tanzania. She sent her recipe. And so, yeah, so that's what I'm going to be doing. So thank you so much for this. So this was like a great lead in for that. And we got dinner. So thanks,
And
guys.
you dinner. Go have fun. Figure out the murder.
Fun. Thank you so much.
I just want to be the killer. You know what I'm saying? It would be good if all of these things happened and then I'm just sitting there. So thank you guys. So I'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Good. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Let me start.